Today's daf is daf Tzadi Aleph, the last daf in the Masechet Nedarim, and we're up to Yiboilim. Omer Levaila Girashtani Mahu. Is a woman believed to say that she received a get from her husband, and therefore she can marry anyone else? We can be marked that. Omer Rav Hamnuna Tashma. Let's prove this from our Mishnah that she is in fact Nemenes Omeres Me'aniloch. If she says to her husband that she had a relationship with another man, is dafilu lemishnah chrona the katani lo mehem. Even according to the final mission that we learned yesterday, that she's not believed. That's husband. That's only there. Who did mishaka? We assume, or at least we suspect that she's lying, and she's not afraid of her husband. The yada the lo yada. Her husband could not know whether she had this znus or not, this other relationship. Girashtani, in the case where she says he divorced her, the husband knows whether he gave her a get and she's telling the truth, or he never gave her a get and she's lying. Mehemna, she's believed the chazaka ein isha me'iza paneh b'fnei baila. She would not have her husband's panim of lying in front of her husband. Amalei Rav. Rav says to Rav Hamnuna, Adarabba. I would think it's the opposite is true. Afilu Mishnah Rishona, even according to the Mishnah Rishona that we believe her, the Katani B'mehemna, when she says Tmei Anilach, we believe her. Chasam, only in that case do we believe her. Mishum Delo Avida Ulezuye Nafsha. She would not embarrass herself, humiliate herself by saying that she became asura to her husband because of a ma'ase's nus. That's called a bizayon and a pagam. That's humiliating to her personality, her reputation, and therefore, if she did not, in truth, have this tmeya, she wouldn't be mizalzel in herself to say that nitma v'alhacha. But here, when she says girashtani, there's no bizayon, there's no pagam, there's no reason to be humiliated, and therefore, what logical, compelling reason do we have to believe her? She may be very angry at her husband. She wants to get out of this marriage, and me'iza, and she'll say in front of her husband, I received a divorce. So let's just summarize the two shitos here of Rav Hamnuna and Rav. According to the shita of Rav Hamnuna, in a case where she has a chazaka of Eina Isha Me'iza Panel B'fnei Baila, then we believe her. And we derive this from the Mishnah, that the Mishnah says she's not believed in a case where her husband doesn't know whether she's lying or not. But in a case where she's obviously brazenly formulating and expressing a sheker that the Baal recognizes as sheker, then for sure she should be believed. Whereas Rava says no, that the reason why she'd be mehemna in our Mishnah is because her claim involves such a busha, and that's what proves that she's telling the truth. But in the case of Girashtani, she's not experiencing any self-humiliation here, and what compelling reason do we have to believe her? And now the Gemara is going to raise an objection to Rav. Mosiv Rav Misharshia. Rav Misharshia is going to reject Rava, who maintains that if she says Gereshtain, she's not believed because there's no humiliation involved, from the Mishnah that says Hashamayim Beini Uvencha, which means if she's claiming that he could not function in Tashmish and she won't be able to have children, the Mishnah Rishona, according to the Mishnah Rishona, she's believed to say that he's incapable. And to the Rava, because Hacha Wesley Kisufa, Rava was the one who maintained that the reason why she's not believed to claim Gerashtani is because there's no humiliation involved. Only when she claims that she has a vice's nus, then we should believe her because she's humiliating herself here by claiming that he's the one who's responsible for this situation. It's his desire, but she doesn't suffer any humiliation. Nevertheless, the Mishnah says the Behemna, she is believed according to the Mishnah Rishona. So you see that the Nemonis here is not based on because even in the case where there's no bizarre involved, she still believes. And therefore, even in the case of Gerish Tani, Rava should admit that she should be believed. And the Gemara answers, because some of Rava, Chasam, there in the case of Shamayim Beinilu Veinecha, there is in fact Bizoya. Why? Kaven de Lo Sagila, and he says Lo Sagila means Lo Yiskablu Dvareha Bebezdin, Kol Od Lo Omra, until she says Ein Yora Kechetz. In other words, the Bezdin is going to interrogate her until she says that he doesn't have the ability to be Yora Kechetz, for the sperm to shoot up. And Ilo Isa Kirika Amra Lo Amrale. If this was not true, then she would not say this, because it's a busha for her to go into such detail and explicitly say that he's not Yora Kechetz. That also is a busha. Kevin Shachayeres Lefarides Tanosa Shaina Yora Kechetz Sui Taina Sheyesh Ba Busha Ubi Zoyin V'Meina Emes Kidvarelo Haisa Toenes Kach. And obviously that doesn't apply in the case where she says Gerish Tani. There's no element of busha at all. Now the Gemara is going to raise an objection to Rav Hamnuna. Rav Hamnuna says that she's believed to say Gerish Tani, even according to the Mishnah Achrona, because of the very powerful chazak of Eina Isha Me'iza B'fnei Baila. If her husband recognizes her sheker, like in the case of Gerish Tani, she would think 1,000 times before she would have the chutzpah to say something against in the presence of her husband in the bezdin, that the husband knows she's lying through the teeth. So the Gemara raises the following objection to Rav Hamnuna. The Mishnah says, "Hashamayim beinilu veinecha," and the Mishnah Achrona, she's not believed, is tehevi tiyufta live Rav Hamnuna. And why is this a tiyufta to Rav Hamnuna? V'hacha, here in the case where she says, "Hashamayim beinilu veinecha," the yada he the baila yadaba. She certainly knows that the husband himself is going to recognize the sheker, and therefore, according to Rav Hamnuna's logic, we should apply the chazak of Ein Aisha Me'iza Panevasei Baila, and she should be believed. And yet, according to the Mishnah Achrona, she's not believed. Katani lo mehemna. So too, in the case of Gerish Tani, she should not be believed, because even though she knows that her husband recognizes her sheker, but nevertheless, she's not believed. So we see that the Mishnah does not rely on the chazaka Ein Aisha Me'iza Panem B'fnei Bayit. And the Gemara now defends Rav Hamnuna, Kasavra Rav Hamnuna Hacha. Here in the case of Hashamayim Beini Veinecha Nami, he Gufa Omra, the V'bia Yada, but the Yorek Echetz Mi Yada, Mishmahachi Meshakra. The reason why she's not believed in the case of Shamayim Beini Veinecha is because she thinks that her husband doesn't know that she's lying. It's not the chazak of Ein Isha Me'iza does not apply over here. She thinks that although her husband knows, and he's aware of the fact that Polad says there, but Yorek Echetz Miyada, only she can feel whether he was Yorek Echetz. He doesn't have any sensitivity to that. He can only be sensitive to the fact that he was capable of having a beer, and therefore she would lie, and she has no compunctions about lying, since she doesn't believe that he would recognize her falsehood. But in the case of an Isha, Gerish Tani, certainly she knows without a shadow of a doubt that he knows whether she's lying or not, and therefore if she wasn't telling the truth, she wouldn't be Me'iza Panel B'fnei Baila, and therefore according to her from Buddha, she's believed to say Gerish Tani. The Gemara now tells a story about Tumah, meaning if a woman becomes Asura L'Baila because she claims that she had an extramarital relationship, do we say that she's not believed, like the Mishnah Achrona, because Shema Nasnai now Biachik? He Issasa, here's a woman who's married to a Kohen, Kol Yom Tashmish. Every time they had Tashmish, Nikadma, she would get up in the morning, Umasha Yodel, and she would wash the hands of her husband. Yom Chada, on one particular morning, despite the fact that they did not have an intimacy, Asiwe Ma'ila Mishisha. Lemimsha, she brought water for his Nefil Sidayim. Allah, Hadam Milsalah Havis Hayidna. This didn't happen today. In other words, we didn't have Tashmish Amnita. Why are you bringing me water to wash my hands? Melesa, she responds, and Cain, if you're telling me that you didn't have Tashmish with me, then Chad min Anochrim, then one of the Goyim, and here we turn to the Apsari Aleph from the base, Loye, these are Mokre Oel, so these people go around and they sell a kind of an asev that's used as a detergent to clean begadim, and he was around today, and he antlo, if you didn't have tashmish with me, then Bilam perhaps minhon, maybe it was one of these mochrei ol of this detergent, the detergent sellers, and maybe it was dark and I didn't see. Amar Rav Nachman says no, she's not asur al baila. Why? We're going to be afraid of her now. She's making up this whole story. She really wants to get out of the marriage. And she artificially manufactured a set of circumstances that looks like she had a beer with another man. She brought the water to her husband to wash his hands, knowing full well that he'll say to her, well, I didn't have beer with you, and less and there's no mamish l'dvarah. Another similar story. Hias Isisa, a woman below Havi Bedicha Data Bahadi Gavra. She wasn't smecha in Baila. Omar Allah, the Baal said to her, Idna Maishno, why are you upset? Why aren't you happy with this marriage? Omar she responded, Me Olam Lo Tza'artan B'derech Eretz Ki Idna. I never had during our intimacy a pain like I had today. Omar the Baal says to him, to her, Lo Havi Hadam Milsa. We didn't have any relationship. Amalim came. If you didn't have a relationship with me, who came in the middle of the night there? Halei Nachrim Naftoye. Those goyim that are Mochrei Neft, they go around selling kerosene to have a Hochayidna, and he was there here today. The Lo, if you didn't have a relationship with me, Dilma perhaps Chad Min Hon, one of those Mochrei Neft had a relationship with me. Amalahu Rav Nachman. Lo tashkichun ba. Again, Rav Nachman, being consistent with his approach, says we're not going to pay any attention to her because no sense no bi'achravi. She wants to get out of the marriage, so she invented the story that she had tsar from her beard. Now, in all these cases, obviously, she's saying, if you accept her claim that she's asur al baila because of tumah, it must be talking about an Ashes Cohen, because in these cases, she doesn't know who she had a relationship with. Therefore, she's not amazing. She's rather a shogeg, and in the case of Ashes Shol, she's not asur al baila b'shogeg. So it must be a case of Ashes Cohen. Hahu gavadavi meharzek v'besa hu ve'intita. He was locked up in a room with a married woman, and al also married the basic. And now the balabayis, the husband, comes in. Parte noef lehutza. The noef ran out of the house. He broke down the mechitza that was made of lulove dekolim, and orik, he ran away. Omar Rav. This is a shari. In this case, she's muteris labala, and then we're not going to assume that she had an adulterous relationship with this man. Why? The Isa, the Avadi Surah, if he really had this adulterous relationship with her, they mirkas. He wouldn't have brazenly and in the public eye, so to speak, in front of the Balabayas, waiting till he came and then ran out of the mechitza. But rather, he would have hidden himself, so that her husband should not see her. And he shouldn't see that he was the adulterous person, the Noah. So obviously there was no near. Another story, Hahu Noah, a person that, generally speaking, has a very loose kind of life. He looks for a near. So he went into the house of a woman, and when the Noah saw the Osagaba that the husband was coming home, Solik Noah, the Asiv Bekile Baba. The Noah went up and he hid himself in the Masach Shulchan Adelis. Havimachton Tachle Taman. There were different kinds of shcholim over there, and the Noah saw the Taminun Chivya, that a nachash was eating from those vegetables. And that makes it very dangerous because there's toxic substances now on the vegetables. Boy, Mori the base and he saw that the Balvais wanted to eat from those shcholim below daite the without the knowledge of the wife. The Noah says, stop, don't eat from them. The Taminu Chivya, because it's dangerous, you might die. Amarava in say Sharia, you can be matir the woman to her husband, if he had actually had this adulterous relationship with her, then let him be passive and let the husband eat this and die. That would seem to be the logical conclusion. Ki nofos heina v'dam b'yedeihem. Yechezkel Navi says that somebody who has the affair of Niyuv, he's also guilty of Shvichas Damim, because the Northern want to see the destruction of the husband, the loss of the husband. And then they can take over this woman. Is Pshita. So the Gemara raises the question, certainly it goes without saying that Choshed al Niyuv, Choshed Gam al Shvichas Damim. So this Noev, who wanted to save the husband's life, Mimisa, certainly he didn't have this adulterous relation. So what's the finish of Rav? And when it says Malditim, I would have thought without Rav. Isura of it. In fact, they did have this adulterous relation. Why did he save the life of the husband? The Nichale Delo Lemus Baal. He really prefers that the Baal stay alive. And why? This is based on principle on Pasuk in Mishlei, that the heavy inset that the wife should be for him, Mayim Gnuhim Yimtaku V'lechem Starim Yino. That Abias Isur, which is Mayim Gnuhim, it's like stolen waters, it's more pleasurable. And therefore, we would say that there's no proof from the fact that he tried to save the husband. Maybe he wanted to increase his pleasure. Mashmalan, that's the Chiddush of Rava, that we're not choshish for that, because the Noid doesn't know that he will have more hana from an Ashes Ish, and if in truth he had this relationship, he would want the husband to die so that he could marry this woman publicly. Hadron Nedarim, the Slika law, Masechet Nedarim.